Adolf Hitler is dead, and with him, any possibility of a Nazi victory. With the Germans defeated, Soviet soldiers stormed Berlin, ending World War II in Europe. But what if things had been different? What if the Nazis had won? Hitler decides to invade the USSR, a former ally. For many historians, this is when the Axis begin to lose the war. While the decision to invade Russia is not necessarily a bad one, as their conflicting ideologies would likely eventually have led to a war, the timing meant Germany now had enemies on all sides, with the army unable to cope with this. As said by the author James Holland, the famous Nazi war machine was anything but efficient. But what if the Nazis hadn't chosen to invade Russia so soon? Historian John Delaney suggests even postponing the Russian invasion, codenamed Operation Barbarossa, to 1943 would have given the Axis powers enough time to completely secure and fortify France, reducing the threat of attack from England or the USA. After this, enough resources and soldiers could be accumulated to make a full-scale invasion of the USSR a viable and achievable plan. While postponing the Russian invasion would not necessarily lead to an Axis victory, it would have given them the upper hand and made the fortification of Western Europe a lot easier. So what if it had all gone according to Hitler's plan? What if the invasion of Russia had been successful? Historians have suggested that the most logical next step from the invasion of Russia would be its annexation, or at least the removal of its communist leadership. With France secured on Germany's west and a Nazi-controlled Russia on the eastern front, the Axis powers would be able to hold off a counterattack indefinitely. This would give them time to build up a substantial army and resources, ready for the eventual invasion of the UK, named Operation Sea Lion. Assuming the invasion had gone according to Hitler's plan, England is now under Nazi control. Even the US is now at risk. With the threat of trade embargoes or nuclear war, any chance of American resistance has been reduced to rubble. From here, the remaining allies would be unlikely to have any chance of fighting back against the Axis. The Nazis have now effectively won the war. Immediately after the end of the Second World War, a hugely significant period began, the Cold War. In real life, this happened because of the thriving competition between America and Soviet Russia, but had the Nazis won, neither country would have enough influence to be of importance, let alone enough resources to engage in an arms race. Similarly, Japan's control over Korea, the presence of Axis colonial forces in Central Africa, and the likely transfer of French colonies in Vietnam would have meant the subsequent wars would have been unlikely to have happened. Whilst this prevention of war is arguably favourable, a deeper dive into Mein Kampf reveals a much darker side to the post-war plans of the Nazi Party. Following on from the atrocities of the Holocaust in his own country, the Führer would have adhered to his manifesto, leading on to a mass extermination of the Jewish race. In the Holocaust, 6 million Jews were killed. Had Hitler won, this could have been more than 10 million. But Hitler did not only plan to exterminate all Jews in his domain. His hatred extended to all people he considered threats to the Aryan race. This included Marxists, gay men, people with disabilities, and even Catholics, despite the fact Hitler believed in God himself. He also planned to divide the USSR into various Axis sub-states. Similarly, Emperor Hirohito planned to remove all American forces from the Pacific, cementing Japanese control of the region. And at the same time as this, Mussolini had plans to expand the Italian colonies throughout the whole of Africa. With Russia controlled by the Nazis, most of sub-Saharan Africa under Italian control, and a high chance of a future Japanese invasion of China, the influence of the Axis powers would effectively have spread throughout the entire world. In many ways, ranging from what we learn in school to the jobs we work and the houses we live in, our society has been influenced by the Allied victory. Even 80 years on, the films we watch and the music we listen to all exist because of the Nazi defeat. Arguably the most significant difference to our culture following a Nazi victory would be the education. Even now, children learn about World War II from the Allied perspective alone, with the Nazis almost always portrayed as the bad guys. Imagine a world in which the Nazis were the heroes of the Second World War. Rather than learning about British history, children might instead be taught about the victories of the Nazi Party or the glory of former German leaders. Not even just the subjects in the schools, but the whole system could be changed. Look no further than the Hitler Youth movement. The indoctrination of children would no doubt begin at as young an age as possible. This influence would not only affect the media we consume, but also the views held by society as a whole. The political viewpoints held by the Axis powers, namely fascism, would be forced upon the conquered countries, as aggressive as the denazification post-World War II. Figures like Hitler, Mussolini and Emperor Hirohito would be heroes. We may not all be speaking German, but the Nazi way of thinking would dominate society, so much so that all other viewpoints would be silenced. But how could these men who committed such atrocities ever be respected or even worshipped, let alone the SS soldiers who literally had skulls on their helmets, or the notoriously ruthless Gestapo? But we have to remember, as Winston Churchill himself said, history is written by the victors. Not a single Allied soldier went on trial for war crimes after World War II. The infamous Nuremberg and Japanese war crime trials focused only on the Axis powers, but from the indiscriminate bombing of cities to the abuse and murder of prisoners of war, the Nazis would have had a plethora of reasons to prosecute Allied troops. Furthermore, whilst Nazi Germany was characterised by brutality and oppression, the scientific and technological advancements pioneered by the Nazis should not be underestimated. The significant advances in fields such as medicine and infrastructure may have led to global improvements, from the autobahns and motorways to popular culture items such as the VW Beetle and Fanta. Even now, we all benefit from Nazi innovation. The Nazis didn't win the war. Because of this, we are free to think, express our thoughts and act without fear. But next time you sit down to watch Saving Private Ryan or load up a game of Call of Duty, remember that one decision could have changed everything. Everyone can picture the swastika. Everyone knows the infamous Hitler salute. But imagine this same flag hanging in your window. The same salute done as you gather to pay respects to the man that started it all.